Hmm. Oh boy, what's going on this time? One moment. Here we go, I think I fixed it. Man, OBS is such a pain in the ass. Such a pain in the ass. Then again, I only have one monitor, so guess it's a setup problem as well. This is not very optimal. Alright, give me a moment. I'm going to just broadcast a stream to the Discord and then we can start. I don't really expect too many people to be on because it's a weekday and it's a bit too early for the US time. It's a bit late for the European time and it's like 6 a.m. where I am right now, so yeah. So I'll just do the pre-stream stuff and then I'll start immediately. Alright, gotta make sure the broadcast on Patreon is working properly as well. I'm just trying to conserve my voice right now. Because I'm feeling a lot better, but my throat is still a little screwed up. Which is still alright, because like a day ago, I pretty much can't talk properly. Like every time I talk, my voice will just go into a weird whine. Like I'll just immediately hit like a pitch for some reason because I think my vocal cords were a bit screwed up. Yeah, so it's the same reason why I just stopped during the weekend. My voice was just about to give up on me. And, you know, I was dizzy and all that. So it wasn't really the best day to do a tutorial. So I'm just checking that everything is okay first. And we can immediately start. Okay. Seems like everything's alright. So I'm just gonna go immediately. So today for this stream, we're going to cover the texture exporting that I didn't really get into properly last stream. And I watched the stream again, and I feel like it's a bit confusing. I could have started explaining things a little bit more clearly. There was a lot of information that I could have put on. So basically, when you do the textures, the main goal is to do 5 textures that you definitely need. One is the face textures, the body textures, the limb textures, and then one for the genitals, and the last one being the eye textures. Now, the reason why there are 5 textures instead of just like one texture is that it's a thing called a UV map, which is basically these things here. So there are 2 things that you immediately notice. Number one is that every single one of these little grids, they basically correspond to a grid on the body. So this grid here belongs to, say, I don't know where it is, like here. Sorry, this square is belongs to somewhere like here in the X-ray. So what that basically does is that it'll take this square of texture and then it will project that texture onto that grid on the mesh, wherever the heck it is. I'm not going to try and find it anymore, but you get what I mean. And the second thing that you'll notice is that these are all overlapped right now. So what you need to do is that, and the reason why there are 4 main body textures is to split them off into 4 readable maps that do not have overlapping UVs, because if this overlaps, it's going to project a mess onto this texture. And for us, where the main goal is to first get the proper model, the donor model, and project that onto, this is what we're bringing to VaM. We're basically trying to transplant it. This will not work. What you're going to do if you do that is that you're going to get like a jumbled texture map. It's going to come out jumbled because they're going to try to project the overlapping maps like these things on top of each other, and that's not what you want, and that's not how it works. So for the people who are not aware, the UV maps in VaM uses a Genesis 2 UV layout because they're Genesis 2 models. So for the face, it's this here. I'm going to do this really slowly because this might get confusing. It's going to be the lips, and it's going to be the nostrils, and that's it. And I'm going to take that out. By the way, this is for demonstration purposes, so don't do this to your model, you'll completely ruin it. This is for a demonstration only. So I'm going to take that out, and then you'll notice that, okay, this is one UV map, there's nothing overlapping. It's very clean, and you can see that the texture in the background is for a Genesis 2 model, and you kind of get the idea of what I said about a certain grid projecting onto the mesh, you know, like this, right? And the good thing is that when you go into wrap, basically you have to select these bits and then select the entire your version of the Genesis 2 model, and then project, which is basically X-ray / export that certain texture and save it. And the good thing is that I've already done that for you, so you don't need to highlight or select anything in the rep file. I've already done that for you. But this is important to know anyways, in case there's any troubleshooting. Sometimes it doesn't go across perfectly, or sometimes there are gaps onto the texture maps because the texture from the Blender file, whatever you're working on, are separated into different parts again, and depending on how you sculpted your model, the map might not end on like a perfectly straight edge, so there might be like a gap or something and you need to fill it in. Depending on the original texture files, you might need to do that manually, or there might be an automated way, and by doing by using the rep program. So this is just a basic fundamental thing that you need to know. So for the face, it's these materials. The face, I'm saying materials, it's from the material tab, material properties, so you just select it from here. So it's the face, the nostrils, and the lips. And all this sounds really complicated, but you'll get used to it, trust me. Now, for the torso, it's the head, the ears, the neck, the torso, the nipples, and the hips. And I'll just demonstrate this again. Actually, I might turn this off, because I'm not sure if YouTube likes the whole thing with the textures, even though it's like kind of iffy. I'm not sure if it might trigger something, just better to be safe. Let me double check it now, actually. I'm not sure if I ran into any issues with the stream. Okay, it's fine. Yeah. It should be fine. So for the torso, it's these parts here, and you notice that the UV map, it should look like this. So there should be the ears here. This is the head. This section here and up to about here, it's the neck. That's the main torso, and then you got the hips, and you got the nipples. So if you're doing any decals and all that, this is useful to know. Because generally, if you make a decal, for example, I sometimes do nipple decals, they usually end up in the same place. So, what I mean by the same place is that I can move this. You notice this corresponds to here. I can move this quite violently, and it stays in the same place. So if you have a nipple decal that's around here. Oh, hello, Dying. Just doing the textures. How are you? Yeah, so if you have a nipple decal that always occupies a spot, theoretically you can go into programs like Koikatsu, grab their nipple textures, do everything, cut that away, clean that up a bit, and you can basically make your own set of nipples. That's what I actually planned to do, but I got sick. I actually planned to make like a anime nipple pack because I've been using the same one for like years now, and it's good to get variety. Oh yeah, I'm feeling a little bit better. My voice is a bit stuffed up. I'm not sure how it's coming across on your end, but I'm trying to conserve my voice a little bit. I was coughing up phlegm, like this is a bit gross, but I was coughing up phlegm like up until yesterday. So I'm trying not to get too crazy. Alright, so that's how the textures should look like for the torso texture. And then for the limb texture. Oh, I sound the same. Oh, that's actually great. Now, the torso texture are the shoulders, the forearms, the hands, the legs, and the feet. Now, you'll notice from the selection that I'm omitting a few things. I'm not going to do the fingernails and the toenails. Actually, I'll do them now and then explain why I'll cut them out later. And I kind of touched on this last stream, but I want to explain it further. Furthermore, you don't really need these bits here. These bits, they're auto-generated by VaM, and there's a separate tab to do like final adjustments on them. So you won't need this at all. By the way, Dying, I thought I'll be like way too early for you guys, so that's good, that's good. Because this is mainly like European time. I plan to do like an European time stream and an American time stream. Maybe if this time zone right now works out, then I'll stick to this time more. Oh no, I need to do this first. And what's first descent? I've actually never heard of that. Oh, anyways, back to the subject. You notice that the fingernails and the toenails occupy these UV slots here. So the fingernails should be on top and the toenails are down here. And I don't like having them selected in any ways because no matter how well you sculpt your models, like even if you line the fingernails perfectly, when you project the models, it's going to leave jagged edges. And it's going to lead to a manual cleanup anyways. So what you want to do is to just ignore them, do these, and then you'll notice in the pack that I gave you guys on Discord, there are two files called like nails and toenails, which is basically the UV islands for those two, what you just saw right now. you have to go into Photoshop, GIMP, whatever program, select them, and just fill them in. And that will give you perfect edges every single time. You don't have to deal with any type of cleanup or wrapping and all that. Oh, no way you're playing MMO at work? That's great. That's like my dream job. Because work's kind of crazy for me right now. That's like one of the reasons why I'm not feeling too well lately. Okay, so back to the actual subject. Some people might ask, well, if you cut these out, right? Will it like leave a hole here? Well, actually, no. Rep has a really good feature where you could choose one of the options where it'll try to like predict what these missing bits will look like. It's absolutely not perfect and you should not rely on it. But for these like minor things here, it fills in the gaps quite well. So just let it do that and then do the UV thing I told you guys about. Afterwards, there's the fourth main body texture that you need, which is the genitals. And that's the one with the caveat. Because the genital textures is actually just the torso textures with extra shit on top. And by extra shit on top, I mean, I really actually mean extra shit on top, because you'll see here, the crotch, that doesn't actually transplant properly over to VaM. What VaM does is that it'll take a model and then put some extra shit on there. And then that's your genitals, and that actually enables a lot of the gameplay function. Right, but the issue is that doesn't actually appear on this map here, because it's extra stuff that they put on. So that occupies a UV map that's on top of this. So what you need to do for the genital textures is to take your torso texture, and then go into the folder that I gave you, and there should be stuff in there like, actually, what did I name it? Let me take a look again. It's like girl crotch UV decal or something. Let me double check. So it should be called like decal or overlay or something like that. And you need to go into the texture program, load up the text. Sorry, you need to go into the texture program, load up those overlays, just shove it on top, do some color correction, and literally just pray. Because the main issue with that is that if you're working with this on a texture program and you see like a hard edge, you can just use a blur to sorry about that, to merge the edges together. But since that works like the thing that VaM puts on top of it, it doesn't actually appear on your morph or your UV map. You can't really blur it. I'm so sorry. So it doesn't actually appear on there, so there's no way to really blur it. If you blur it, you kind of make things a little bit more, how should I say, you ruin other things. Excuse me. Hey. Yeah. Yeah, so the code hasn't completely left me yet. Anyways, with this out of the way, with this explanation out of the way, I'm gonna go on to the UV wrapping. And I'll basically start from the top again this time. So why did I pull up Steam? Let me go to OBS and grab the... There we go. So what you want to do is to go into your project folder, and then there should be a program called limwrap. And you'll also notice that there'll be files called like torso wrap, face wrap, ear wrap, eyeline, head wrap, etc, etc. These are all pre-made files that I've already done for you. So you don't need to do anything, well, too many extra things, and I explained that now. So going back, you'll notice that here I already highlighted the limb section that you'll need for your... this is a limb material, corresponding limb material that's already been highlighted, so you don't need to select anything more. This is already done for you. And so what you need to do is to go over to this side and select everything. This part on the left will always be constant because it's always going to be a Genesis 2 model, and this is the model that you've done. And assuming that you've done all the steps correctly, this same parts will always be highlighted every single time, and this will pretty much be the same for any model you work on, assuming that you've done your steps correctly. And on this side is the donor model. Now, because the donor model could be from Toykatsu, it could be any iteration of Genesis model, it may come, like the highlighting may be a bit messed up, so you need to make sure that you come into the screen here every single time and just drag and mouse over it to select everything. Now, sometimes the text, there'll be like little error marks right from the get-go, and that's because you need to select your texture first. So here I've already selected it, and if you haven't, you just have to press this button here, a window will pop up, you select the texture that you need, it will load, and then hopefully all the errors will go away, and you just drag, select all of this, come into here. Don't mind the label here, I just wrote down whatever. For your file, it should be limd. D stands for diffuse, and I explain that later, but just for now, press compute current frame. So if it looks like this, there's a reason for this. So limbs with a S. You want to name it like this, your final output to be called limbs D, torso D, face D, genitals D, at this size, which is 4096 by 4096. And that's because later on, when you put it into the VaM folder, VaM has a function where it automatically detects the name in that certain folder, and as long as you follow a certain naming convention, VaM will load those textures up automatically. And that will save you a lot of time, because filling with menus in VaM is an absolute pain in the ass. So anything that you can get away with that's done automatically, it's a plus. So don't really worry about what's in here. It could be called googly-gook 1234 ABC. Just make sure that the final file that you're going to put into the VaM folder is called limbs D, torso D, etc, etc. So I'm going to press compute current frame, and I'll show you the output. To open this up with GIMP. And I'll have to play with OBS for a little while, just to... No, don't do that. Yeah, I'm wrangling the OBS settings right now. Here we are. And just let me drag this. Okay. So, this should be what you have. It's a very nice and clean image. And then, for the fingernails and all that, I'll explain it now because it's part of the limb texture. So I've already done something like this. I thought I should, one moment. Do this properly from the start. So for your fingernails and your toe texture, you open up the thing from the pack that I gave you. You press U for selection. You click on anywhere here. You press Control I to invert the selection. Then just pick your nail color that you want. So in this case, I usually do like a light pink. You go into the bucket and just do that, right? And you do the same thing for the toenails. Like this. Then Control Shift C. You go into here, Control Alt V. And then the same here. Like that. So this will give you like the perfect outline. There's no spilling out into these sections here where it'll leave jagged edges. The colors for the fingernails and the toenails will appear in the right section of the mesh every single time if you've done this, if you do this. So I'm going to save it as limbs D, or overwrite in this case. And that's pretty much the perfect limb texture. Next, I'm going to go into the torso. So I'm going to save the ref file. Let me turn off the game thing first. Save it. And then go into the torso. So here it's loading the wrong file. I'll need to open it up. Load the correct file. And you notice that on the left hand side again, I've already selected everything for you. It should be like this every single time. And then on the right hand side, you need to manually reselect everything. And then you just move down here. For you, should be torso D. For me, since I'm working with an older version of my own preset, it's called this. It doesn't matter, just save it. And then load it up in GIMP again. And I'll show you guys how it should look like. Okay, this is really annoying me. One moment. Okay, here. So in this case, the texture has like a lewd thing going on with it, with the what do you call this? Like a womb tattoo or whatever. So that's good. This came up pretty clean, or as clean as the original texture resolution allows it. Now, the torso texture usually requires a bit of fiddling with, because one, you'll notice that this didn't really come up properly, and that's what I mean when I said that sometimes there'll be parts where things didn't line up properly, and so it gets a little bit jumbled. And just to further explain what I mean, I'm going to bring in another tool that I gave you guys, and it should be called neck UV in the pack that I gave you guys. And you bring that on, and basically this is the UV map that corresponds to the neck of the model. And you notice that in the neck section here, yeah, it got cut out basically. So this repair will probably have to be done manually. If I can't do this automatically with the wrap program, that's fine. And there's like a little bit of artifacting here on this side as well. So yeah, that needs some work. You also notice there's no nipple texture, and that's because the nipple textures are from a different pack for the specific model. Once again, it's not really a big deal. I have like a nipple decal that I can just plop on in VaM, or just plop onto here directly. Nowadays, I prefer to do it in VaM, just so people can take it off and replace it with their own if they wish. So in this section here, this part is supposed to be the back of the head that I'll rip later, and then the ears go here. So I'll leave this be for now. This is just for demonstration, really. So I'm just looking at Discord right now. Oh man, those screenshots look nice. Yeah, getting distracted midstream. Oh no. I want to laugh. Like, I'm holding in my laughter right now, but it's gonna like tear my voice apart. So if there are any tears with the neck section, I recommend you to look really carefully at the textures, because if it's tearing, then it must be connected to something. So the best thing to do is to find out what's it connected to, and then see if you could find whatever it's connected to, rip that texture, and then try and jigsaw it together. So I'm gonna take a look right now. Yeah, it's getting kind of silly. A moment. And I have to be a little bit careful, because I'm not sure if it's gonna display any weird textures. Okay, so as long as I keep the clothing on, I should be fine. Alright. So just pop into here. So this is the original texture. I'm not sure why this is showing up like this. So it could be part of the base texture. Yeah. So in this case, it's a little bit unfortunate. It means that I might need to fix this up manually. But that's a very peculiar. That is a very peculiar Because textures don't usually work like that. Oh. Okay, so it's probably picking up from... Okay, so it's picking up from a bad texture map. That's what's really happening. So you can tell from the UV island that... You can tell from the UV island that the texture that's reading should look something like this. So what you need to do is just basically hunt things down and see if you can find a texture map that resembles that. Otherwise, you might be a little bit shit out of luck and you might need to do things automatically. I mean, not automatically, manually. I wish it's automatic. And it appears that... Nope. Appears that there's no corresponding texture, which is very weird. I've never really seen this before. I am going to load this model again. I feel like I'm missing something here, just to be safe. Yeah, sometimes VaM is a lot like this, with all your projects. So it's like a lot of investigative work. Every project's not really the same, so yeah. That's kind of the fun. So I don't get why it's doing it to this one. Is that the new one? Oh, it's way down here. Okay, so even in the larger model, I mean in the new model, it's still doing that. It's still doing that, so... yeah, I guess this needs to be a manual fix. Which is super peculiar. I'll do that later. I'll probably do that off stream. Once I figure that out, I might explain it next stream. I won't dwell on this for too long. Oh, hey Dying. What model is this? This is the Taiho model. It's from a commission that I've put on hold for too long. So it's one of the work in progress screenshots. I've done the mesh, I need to do the textures. So I'm just going to do it on stream. Anyways, I'll figure out the mystery of that neck later. Once I figure that out, I'll explain it next stream. I won't let it hold up the tutorial guide. But yeah, stuff like that will happen. So the usual fix for that is that usually it's there's a cutoff between the neck and the face, and sometimes when you sculpt the model, you won't get the edges aligned perfectly. So when you project the textures across another, there'll be gaps in the line. So you have to do the torso, and then you load up the face texture afterwards. Go on this side, get this, and then figure out where the cutoff is. Usually it's very apparent, so you can just use the automatic selection tool, copy and paste that across, and that's fine. Oh no, I think that's a heavily modified one. Well, not heavily, all the textures is somewhat modified. Anyways, that's what the person who commissioned her wanted, so I'll just do that anyways. Ideally, for stuff like tattoos, for myself anyways, I'll do that as a decal, so people have the option to just remove or add them as they wish. But hey, it's a commission, so whatever. So going back to going back to the actual subject and not getting sidetracked again, which is what happens a lot. Grab the face next. I mean, no, your model has tattoos. That's perfectly fine because the character, the tattoo is part of your body, but like stuff like wound tattoos and stuff, it's not specific to the character. It's not part of the character design. It's a little bit extra. So some people like the option to have the natural character. If that makes sense. Yeah, so for this, grab the face texture, which I've already done here. Same thing, you recognize this from earlier. And then grab, highlight everything here like I've done. Do this. You know, I won't go through this again. It's the same thing. And once you get used to this, like this entire step should really just take you about 2 minutes. I'm going through things really slowly right now to really explain the fundamentals. So that's how the face texture looks like. It's a little bit messy, and there's a lot of cleaning up to do. And you have to go back to the pack that I gave you guys, which you should have just dumped into your project folder. There's a file called FaceUV that is for troubleshooting. So if you overlay that on top of the face textures, you'll notice a few things. Is that one, this will take a bit of cleaning up. Two, this will also, the lips will also take a bit of cleaning up. And on the point of the lips, the top parts here are probably the interior, so you don't really need to trouble yourself too much. Sometimes this leaks out to the front of the lips a little bit, and this looks fine on like a anime shaded model. But in the 3D program like VaM, it sometimes look a little bit weird because this will kind of look weird on top of like a natural shadow shader. So you might decide to actually just paint over this, just get rid of this. And this is going to need fixing as well. So I'm not sure what this artifact is, but basically it's encroaching on the bottom of the face. So if you leave this here, it's going to leave like a gray mark on her bottom of her chin, where it connects to the neck. So you're gonna have to go in and paint over this. And when you do anything in VaM, you need to go into mirror and vertical symmetry. Otherwise, you're gonna waste a lot of effort. So by painting over it, I'll usually mean like use the clone tool, or if you're dealing with an anime model, just grabbing the color is fine, because usually it's just one flat color, and just drag this over here like so. It's gonna be a little bit messy. If there are any shaded parts, like for example, if there are any shaded parts like here that looks like this, let's say this is the edge of the neck, you're gonna prefer to use a cloning tool, which is this thing up here. But for this section here, it looks like just flat colors. So I can just get away with sampling the colors with a control left click and just doing this, right? And don't be shy if you're using the cloning tool or whatever. Sometimes they're hard edges. just go back over it with a blurring tool and it should be fine. Now, this will need fixing and this will need fixing, but it'll require other exported bits first, so I'll do that first. And speaking of which, I need to check if I have those bits. No, I don't. So, yay, more explanations coming right up. Yep, so just a little moment. Okay, so you notice that for the face, the stuff around the eyes needs a little bit of fixing. And what I usually do is that first I'll save this as a thing called details. These needs to be imported into VaM separately. I mean as clothing, not separately. As clothing. I'll take off her hair for a sec now because it's in the way. So her eyebrows, I'm gonna cut away. The texture for this. No, I won't export the texture for this. I'm gonna export this as clothing, so that's fine. I don't need that. For these, it's gonna be clothing as well, so I don't need to project these textures. These are gonna be actual objects in VaM. The eyelashes as well. I'm just gonna select the hairs. Or use something else. So what you have left here are these eyelashes, and what you want to do is save this as a file name. I'm gonna call this EL for eyeline, just capital E and L, and save it as that name because one of my wrap files actually will automatically pick that up. So you won't really have to do much. So what I usually like to do is to grab this, go through the wrap file, and then put that on top of the face here. And that's basically because sometimes in VaM, when you have this as like a clothing on the face and she does like any movement like squinting the eyes or something, occasionally the skin will poke through on occasion. Or not even that, sometimes you're in a funny angle, so you're like this. And what you really don't want is to see any imperfections along the line. And so you project this texture onto the face or overlay it over the face. So there's like a texture of the eyebrows, sorry, eyeline behind the actual eyeline itself. So, and if you do that under most angles or if anything clips through, it's like a mascara where it blends the shape together and it makes things look much, much better. So, there are a few things going on in Discord. I'll answer them in a moment. So, right, so you save that as EL. And then you're going to wrap. You go into wrap, and I'm going to fiddle with OBS again. There's a file called eyeline, and you see immediately that there are little errors, and that's the texture error that I'm telling you guys about. You have to find the texture, which is is, I believe, face diffuse. In this case, it might be different for your project. Just grab the corresponding one. You notice on this side that the face is already selected, so don't mess with that. And on this side, press reset if it shows up, and just select this entire section here. And then go on to this side. Now, there's a difference between the left and the right. On the right hand side, it's connected to this, the extrapolate. What this does is that on the right hand side, it will try to fill in any blanks. It will auto predict any blanks and it will try to fill it in. And that's very useful for body textures. But you don't need this for overlay textures. For overlay textures, you don't want anything filled in. So you go on the left hand side, and this is called eyeline 2. It should be called like eyeline something on the files I gave you guys. So just compute again. And I'll show you guys what I'm talking about on GIMP in a moment. Oh, it popped up. Okay, cool. So putting into GIMP, it should look something like this, right? And you notice that there's a little bit of imperfection. That's fine. That's just the program being imperfect. So you just select this, take that, drag that across, clean it up a little bit. If you're not sure if there's any little dots that you've missed, just use the selection tool, see if there's anything there. So here, yeah, clean that up a little bit. Clean these lines up a little bit where you can. It's pretty clean. It's pretty clean. Turn on the face UV. So you don't want the entire thing because otherwise the shadow effect looks way too strong. So usually I like to just shear off a little bit. In this case, it's usually around somewhere here. Like that. I'm holding the shift buttons to get straight lines. And make sure that vertical symmetry is on, so you're working both sides at the same time to save a lot of time. And just go across here. And usually I like to cut off around here. For how I do the eye shape, the tunnels, if I do it by 3 ranks, 1, 2, 3, this should be the end of the eye socket basically. So I will usually cut off here then. And then just cut off here. Now this might not be perfect. You may need to adjust this after you load the texture in VaM. But for the most part, this should be 90% good and done. Next bit is to clean up the interior of the eyes. And for myself, now this is something that you need to do yourself, right? This is definitely something you need to do yourself, but I'll explain the process first. I have a texture called eye overlay, and that will, the shape of this will entirely depend on how you do the eyes. So if you do your eyes 3 rank deep, or 2 rank deep or whatever, I would recommend you guys to make a basically like a cookie cutter interior eye gap whatever texture. And remember what I told you guys about the UV maps is that no matter how you move the mesh, it's going to be the same either way. The decals will always occupy the same spot every single time. Well, that applies for the eyes as well. So if you're like me and I do all my models in a very standardized way, and which is 3 ranks deep for anime characters, this will apply every single time. But if you do it 2 ranks deep, you need to shorten this yourself, draw it, save it for next time, load it up again and again and again, make adjustments, load it up again and again and again, and so on. So depending if you do 3 ranks deep, 1 rank deep, 2 ranks deep, 4 ranks deep, depending how you do this, it will affect how you what you have here. So I can't give you guys this as a preset. It's going to lead to a lot of confusion, but I'm telling you guys to do this now to save you guys a lot of time. And you say, oh well, you know, how about the color? It might be, you know, can't possibly be you know, the color might be different and all that. Well, that's very simple. You just take this color here, which is the interior of the eyes, and just invert it and just color over it, and that's it, and that's done. Now there might be little spillover spots here. That's perfectly fine as well. You just do that. You just fix it up. You just fix it up. And you load this into VaM, you check the spots. Most of the time, I just guarantee you it's going to be perfectly fine. And once that's fine, you just blur the edges a little bit with a low strength blur, so around 25%. You just go over this, like here. No, you need merge layers. Once it's merged, or once you save it into another texture, you just do that. And then it'll leave like it'll remove the jagged edges. So the next thing you do is to fix all this up, right? Which is quite simple. You just grab a black texture. You always use a black texture. I've tried like blending the top of the eye this with the bottom before, and it doesn't really work too well. Like at the end of the day, the rest of the eyes are in the shadow, so you really don't want to you don't want to mess with that, because it will display any type of imperfection, and the black will basically mix with the eyeshadow clothing that you usually have on anyways, so it'll turn out pretty good in any case. So that's what I do every single time anyways. You might want to try like maybe a gray color. I don't really like it. I've tried like a more fleshy color as well, but it just really it gives like the edge of the eyes too much of a hard edge. So for anime eyes, you don't really want to do that. So black blends in the large eyeballs with the walls of the eye socket. Much better in my opinion anyways. So just color this in. Now if you color in the base texture, you notice that you can just drag this across, and it'll save you a lot of time. And you only really have to watch out when you get to the edge here. So the way I do things is that I like to have a way to streamline 90% of the process, and then spend the other 10% of the time to work on the details. Basically, you want to just make things as easy for yourself as possible. That way you can spend more time on the finer details. So you notice that this is pretty easy. It's basically, there you go. This part here, I'll grab it right now. And this is mainly for anime characters. If you're working with a realistic model, you really don't need to do this anyway. You might want to fill in the eye gap with black, just to maybe blend the eyeball with the rest of the face in a little bit. But generally, if it's like a realistic model, then you don't really need to do this. This is really for an anime model, because anime models are a bigger pain in the ass. So for this bit here, I'm going to have to wait until I load this into VaM. I'm going to reserve my judgment. If it looks good in VaM, I won't touch this up too much. If it looks completely horrible, then what I'm going to have to do is just to paint over it. Yeah, just adjust to the situation. So I'm going to save this as face D for now. Oh, and I feel another cough coming. Excuse me. Alright, so now we've done the limb texture, we've done the face texture, we have to go back to the torso texture. Yeah, I'll just leave that there. So for the torso texture, I mentioned that I need to fix this up. I need to add the head, I need to add the ears. So I'll grab that right now. Going back into the wrap program. Let's get the ears. That's probably a lot easier to explain. So you notice that there's the error again. What do? We go to the face, or whatever corresponding texture is usually connected to the face. Don't touch anything here. You'll notice that the ears are already selected. And for this here, you'll notice that sometimes this will happen. So just select everything again. Just grab this. Save it. Save the project. Open up GIMP. And you notice that the ear textures are here. Sometimes there are some jagged edges that you'll need to kind of just touch up a little bit, but this looks quite good for the most part. And go back into the project folder and you'll notice that there's a file called ears UV that I gave you guys. Drag this into here. Selection tool. Make sure that the overlay is selected on the side. Selection tool, and you notice that the selection tool will do an outline of the UV. Invert, and I want you guys to go to select, grow, and extend by 1 pixel. This guarantees that it grabs everything, and it won't lead, it won't have like edges. Because sometimes if it's too close to the UV, even though it encompasses the entire UV, things get picked up a little bit differently, so you get like weird dots around the edge. So if you grow it by 1 pixel, it should get rid of that. So paste it with Control Alt V, and you'll notice that it's going to go straight onto here and new layers. That's fine. And I'll do the same thing for the head. Now for the head, you'll notice that, let me go into the blender first. That for the head, blah, 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 what am I going to say? Despite your model having like a full head, you will notice that the original model has a dent. So Wrap will try to do its best to make it for those textures, but a lot of the times it's going to be imperfect. Now we're going to be lucky because this entire section here, for most looks, are going to be covered by the hair. So any imperfections here is not a big issue as well. And a lot of the times I just leave it there, namely because they're actually useful for when you're moving the CUA hair around, and they actually act as a good guide for you to get the placement correctly. And since it's hidden anyways, it's not a big deal. But if you're an ultra perfectionist, it's something to look out for, and you might need to play around and gimp with. For myself, it's never an issue. In fact, it's a bit useful, so I just leave it as it is. And I'm just telling you guys now before anyone panics. So going back into rep, I'm gonna have to wrangle OBS again. There we go. There should be a file called head rep. I need to cough again. Let's take another sip. So going back to face diffuse, I suppose that should be from face diffuse, right? You know what, let me double check textures. Oh boy. Yeah, since I just woke up, everything's kind of spilling out, let's say. Yeah, so the head texture is here, so that should be the right texture. Yep, so don't touch this, it's already selected for you. Select everything on the right hand side. Go into here, grab it. And then check it. And go. I had to mute myself, Heartbeat. It's gross. It's all me coughing and sneezing. And you can hear the shit like going up my nostril and coming out. Okay, so this is the exported head texture, and there's immediately red flags. So this is not supposed to be there, and this looks a bit weird, so I need to go back and double check things. It could be possible that this is part of the actual texture, but could be part of the actual texture, but and it's like all covered up by the actual hair itself. So I don't know. It's not the first time. Oh. Let me hide that. Yeah, so, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, gee, thanks. I have no idea why this is there, but for... Jeez. It's so bad. Okay. Alright. So, it should be fine. It should be fine. I get what's going on now. I just have to get rid of that. I just don't know what that's supposed to be. I guess the person who made the textures made an oopsie, and then the hair just went on. So maybe it's a guide. I don't know. I'm tempted to leave that on now. It could be part of the actual character. Who knows? Anyways, sidetracked long enough. So go back into the pack. There should be a file called head UV. Do the same thing. It's like the ears, but for the head. Do this. And then selecting the UV thing, UV overlay, just selection tool again, invert it. Go to select, row by 1 pixel. Remove this. Select the actual image. Control Shift C to grab this. And then Control Alt V to stick this in place. Now you immediately notice that there's some hard edges here. This will need a lot of fixing. Basically this kind of triangle section here is bugged out. And that's due to the actual textures from the donor model itself. So this will need to be blended in a bit. I'll do this off stream, and because this is a little bit unconventional, it's not usually like this. I need to figure out how to fix this. Once I figure out a way, I'll let you guys know next stream. And it's the same on this side as well. This is actually on the original texture. I have no idea why it's like that. I need to figure that out. Maybe I'm missing something, or it's like a texture bug is reading the wrong, file or something. So I need to figure that out off stream. Once I figure that out, I'll let you guys know and I'll fix it there, because yeah, it might be interesting. It's like a whole mystery for me. Anyways, just save this as torso D. But you should see now like how this whole thing is done. Is the torso is by far the most complicated bit. The head is kind of complicated, but you can streamline it in such a way that it's very manageable, right? So torso complicated, not very complicated, and then the limb with the nails, that's just baby mode. So next you want to fiddle around with the genital textures now. I'm not sure if I do that on stream. I'm gonna risk it because it's not on a 3D model. I mean, yeah, I'm just gonna screw it. I'm just gonna do it live. So I mentioned before that the genital models is just the torso model with some extra steps. And what you need to do is to go into the pack that I gave you. There should be a black and white thing called Genitals S, and then a bunch of decals. So what I want you guys to do is to drag a file called Genitals S and overlay. So not overlay, decal. On top of the torso, a copy of the torso texture, and it should be something like this. Now, why I want the black and white on top is that it displays the, how should I say this, how VaM reads the genital textures. So I mentioned this before, is that VaM add the genital textures on top of your actual body, and so it makes it really tricky because it's not on the mesh that you export yourself. It's something extra that it added on, which means that blending of any edges is a big pain in the ass. You don't really know where it occupies in terms of the UV map. Well, in this case, if you have this, then it should make it a little bit simpler. So you notice that there's now extra bits here on top that's sitting here. That's kind of sitting here and sitting here. But you notice that what should be here is up here. This is all messed up. And yeah, these are all going to be a big pain in the butt. So you're using them as a guide to hopefully get the right colors in the right place. So with the decal texture, you can kind of tell where the edge of the butt is going to be. It's going to be somewhere here. So I'll take this color here. And this is by no far perfect. It is very imperfect. Yeah, this is very, very imperfect, but it's going to be a lot better than using the automated gentle textures. You could use that, but that takes a little bit of fiddling around with the sliders as well, and sometimes it doesn't match up perfectly. So, yeah, make sure the right one's selected, just do that. I mean, if you select the wrong texture, then all you have to do is just go back and go back and forth until you find the right shade that kind of blends properly, I guess. Now for anime textures, you don't really want these bits here, so I'll just don't really want these bits here. And just to make it more anime-ish, because you want the colors to match, I'd suggest you to colorize it. Just to make sure that it fits the flesh tone. So that's by and large about it. So I call this genitals D. And there's probably a bit of fine tuning that I need to do. I probably mess this up a little bit, but you can only tell when the actual texture is loaded into VaM. So just do this for now. Make sure you have the actual file, and then if there's any extra work to be done, you do that afterwards. Yeah, once you get to the final steps, there's a lot of back and forth. So that's done. Now the next bit is the eye textures. So I need to go back and figure out her eyes. One moment. So I noticed in the pack there's a bunch of eye textures, so I'll have to go in and figure out which texture it is. So the best way to do that is you load the original model itself. Now there's usually two ways about this. One, if you're lucky, this part here is already incorporated into the actual eye texture. In this case, it doesn't seem like it. It's sitting on top of the actual eye. So if I take this away, it's sitting here. So you can do this the easy way or the hard way. The hard way would be to just paint that in automatically. No, I keep saying the word automatically. Painting it in manually. Yeah, manually. And you know what I'm about to say. You said you don't want to do anything manually. If you can, you want to automate it. And luckily for you, I've figured out the way. And it's actually part of the wrap file I gave you guys. So what you need to do is to grab the eyes and grab the highlight. And you only need one side. So just remove one side. Yeah, deleting's fine. And then same for this as well. Okay, now that's prepared. Figure out where this is actually from. So that's from the main face textures. You want to grab the UV map. Because this will save you a bit of time later on. It's saving. Okay. And then okay, this is from here as well. And I don't need to grab the UV map from here because I'll explain it as I go along. and then save this. And I'll call this, and let me display this on. I will call this iris base. And this is a very specific file name because rep will pick up this name here. That's why I'm showing it to you guys. And I'll do the same for here. And I'll call it sparkle. Sparkle without an S. So sparkle, not sparkles, sparkle. Right. And then what we need to do is hop over to wrap again. Or did I close the program? Okay, I need to turn it back. Okay. And if you open up wrap, you'll find a file called overlays. And I'll load the texture first before explaining what this file actually does. So occasionally when you mess around with it's not loading. Okay, did I call it? Okay, maybe, yeah, okay, so it's called base. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so this should be the base, so the whatever's underneath, and this should be whatever's on top. Now I might have scuffed up this file's name, the thing, but that's the foundation of that. So what that does is that there's the base here, and then there is the whatever goes on top here. So what that does is that it grabs whatever's on top and then project it on top of how should I explain this? It'll grab whatever's on top, and then relative to where it's sitting, it will make a projected texture on top of this. So this is very useful. This overlay file is very useful for, let's say, not even just the eyes. Let's say you've got a piece of clothing and there's a bunch of buttons sitting on top, and buttons are a pain in the ass to export into VaM because VaM will just deform it. So a very good alternative is just to grab the buttons the same way I grab the highlights. I'll call it over or buttons or something, and then grab the piece of the cloth where it's sitting on top of. You don't need the whole thing, just where it's sitting on top of. Call it base, whatever, and make sure the base is on the left hand side, and then just project that on top of it. And what it does is that it will create a set of texture that you can overlay on top of the main texture, and I'll show you what I mean right now. Or right now, once I figure out how this. Oh my god, okay, I need to explain everything again because the damn. I am so sorry. Let me explain everything again because Blender was in the way the entire time I was talking. I was just yapping and... Okay, so you need to open the overlay file, grab the correct texture. The base, the texture that's sitting on the bottom goes on the left. Whatever goes on top goes on the right. Make sure this is all highlighted. Both parts here are all highlighted. Make sure that the resolution matches the resolution of of the texture from the base. So in this case, the texture on the base is the face texture, which is also 4090 by 96. So in this case, I can keep it 4096. If it's smaller, like let's say to 2048, I believe, then switch it to 2048. Just make sure it's the same because it needs to be same size. This is going to be sitting on top of that. So save it as highlights. Drag this in, and you'll notice that it's going to sit on top here. Right. It's going to sit on top here. So there's now no need to draw anything. This is just going to go straight into here perfectly. I'll double check if there are any hard edges for the highlights. Any weird artifacting. There's none. It's just this, so that's perfect. And just to make sure this blends in even better, I'll merge down the layers. Okay, this is going to bother me a little bit. I'm going to fix it right now. Yeah. I'm going to merge down the layers. And just do a soft blur. A very soft blur. Just to do that, to get rid of the jagged edges. The jagged edges is because the mesh itself is probably... you know, it's got like a shape to it with jagged edges, so that's what Rep picked up. I can do a lot better than that. So just use a low strength blur, drag it across here like that, just to make sure that there are no jagged edges. Yes, good eyes are important. The eyes look good, the model looks good. Okay. And then if you remember previously, I grabbed the UV island map for the eyes, for the iris. So now you can just do the same thing that I've done previously with the ears and the head. And I don't really need to expand selection for this one. Then going back to your project folder, there should be a file called iris UV template. And this is a template for your the shape of the eyes. So this is the UV for your eyes. This is how VaM's going to pick up your eye, the iris. So up here will be the eye whites, which generally you don't really need to touch because VaM provides a set itself, as well as anime characters just keep it white anyways. So you don't need this. Just do the iris. The iris is the most important bit. So Ctrl-Alt-V to stick this on. Drag it into place. And the best way to do this is just to nail down the opacity a little bit. And do stuff like that. Around here. Don't need to go to the outer edge too much. You want like, most anime looks have like a little black ring around the iris. So that works out. In the ideal scenario, this will be a perfectly round shape where you can just fit this in perfectly. Now this is like a lopsided oval. And leaving it like this is perfectly fine. This is... yeah, this is entirely doable. Though I like a little bit of symmetry. Yeah, something like that. And maybe a little bit. Hold shift so that it locks one of the axes, so you won't... yeah, just hold shift while you drag this. It doesn't need to be completely perfect to the edge kind of thing. I just like it a little symmetrical and just being a little bit pedantic right now. Sometimes this will work against your favor. But for now, I think it's should be alright. If it doesn't work out, then just repeat the process. It's not a really hard process anyways. Just repeat it and yeah. That's about it. Go up to here, lock it in. Right. And what you need to do now is to make sure that you have one on each side. Now you notice that I've done a lot of fine tuning on this side, and you'll be asking, oh well, you know, doing it on this side perfectly, it's going to be really hard. You can get some lopsidedness to it. Don't worry too much about it. Go here, grab the rectangular tool, drag here, set the size to this, and position like that, right? So okay, what this means is that you just have to drag this across perfectly. So Control-Shift-C and then Control-Alt-V. New layer. Go back to this cutting tool again. Zoom in slightly. And you need to get this perfect. Drag this across like here. And you notice it says 2048. 2048 is exactly the midpoint of this particular resolution, which is 4096. So you get 2048 is exactly midway across. This means it's now perfectly translated. It's not mirrored, it's perfectly translated across the other side. And you just save it. And that's your iris done, and I'll save it. Now, there may be finer adjustments to be made. But this is how you get your eyes. And it's the same process for more realistic look as well. You grab the iris texture and then you overlay it on top of this thing here, adjust it, copy it, and then slide it across. So I've already done a Taiho, so I don't want the names to overlap. Damn, they're both summer. I'll just it's not very imaginative. Okay, so that's your iris done. So by now you should have, I'm gonna pull up OBS again. I'm gonna do this. Okay, so by now you should have a set of genital textures, torso textures, face textures, limb textures, and then this here. Okay, so what you need to do now is to bring it into VaM, and people will ask, well, where is the folder? And I'll show it to you guys now. I'm just gonna play around. Give me a moment. I need to do Windows capture, so make sure there's no naughty stuff. I need to make sure there's no naughty stuff there, otherwise I don't know. Worst case scenario, I mean best case scenario, YouTube will get angry at me. Worst case scenario, I get fucking doxxed. So I'm gonna pull up displaying it. Okay, so you're going to VaM, custom, atom, person. Now, if you're Windows 11 or something, you could just tab here, because then you have to go into morphs and then throw in the morph file here. So it's best to have both up. So under textures, go to Taiho Summer 2, go back into your project folder, Grab these things here. Copy and paste it. And I'll make an extra one called gentle. And now you notice that there are these blank normal maps. These blue maps are called normal maps. What these does, their function is to make like ridges up and down type textures. Now anime looks are flat. They're completely flat. You don't want any weird textures, except maybe on the bodies if they have abs or something. But by default, they're flat. So you need to load these, otherwise VaM will use the default one, which does have like bumps on them. Now the usual way to solve that is to go into one of the texture settings and just slide down the I think it's called a specular bump or something. It's at the bottom, 2.0. But this is a much safer way, because even if that's 2.0, it means that the default textures are still there, even though there's nothing loaded. So you need to load this just to bump the default textures out of the way. And it's much the same with the specular as well. So for the specular textures, I usually just do a copy of the diffuse texture. And this is even more important because you can't turn off the specular. If you turn off the specular, it means that there's no gloss and everything. It means that your gameplay will suffer. However, even though there's no specular textures loaded, it will still run the default one. And sometimes it's not really noticeable, but on darker skinned characters, you'll sometimes notice like a shiny outline of, like, let's say like an eyebrow or something on the face. And I'll explain that further in as I do the clothing export, where I'll actually open up VaM. But you notice like weird shiny texture, especially with darker skin characters. So this is just there to occupy the spot and to bump the default textures out, just to kick it out so you won't get any type of misplay, basically. So now, for the most part, the textures are done. Let's see, can I do this? I probably can. Now, these are not perfect. This, the lips will probably need some fine tuning, which means that after I load it into VaM, I'll have to check which bits do not look good and then make some adjustments. So probably I might need to shave down the eyeline a little bit more. The black probably needs to be reduced a little bit, and I'll see how the edge of the neck goes. And then for the torso, the neck is not done. I have to figure out a way to fix this. The edge needs to be blurred in a little bit. The nipple, speaking of nipples, I need to copy this in. This is the decal. The nipples need to be added in, etc, etc. The limbs should be perfectly fine. The limbs is the easiest bit. And then I need to make sure that for the genital textures, the edges here blend in as well as they can to these edges here, due to the issues I told you guys about. But this is about 80% done. There's a lot of fine tuning, and I will recommend you not to close GIMP. Keep GIMP up, because your project is still there. So if you need to do any fine tuning, you don't need to start from step one. You just go back to the thing that should still be open, make your adjustments, save it, slide it back into the folder and load it, right? And this is why I think if you're doing VaM creation, you need a pretty decent computer, because GIMP takes a bit of resources, VaM takes a bit of resources, and you don't really want any slowdowns while you work on these. It gets kind of stressful quite quickly. You can do it if you have like a pretty bad computer, but yeah, just don't get, just you have to relax about it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I'm gonna turn this off. Now, it may seem like everything is done, but this is actually just the first option. This is just the first option that you have in regards to making textures. It's almost been 2 hours, so I explained the other 2 options that you have. So the next option is just to not use any of these provided textures and to just bake your own textures. Now, to bake your own textures, you need a program like Blender or Substance 3D. I would personally prefer Substance 3D because it's a more specialized software. However, Adobe is... I can't even put into words how much I dislike Adobe. And depending on your feeling and depending on your wallet, you may choose to support them or find a back alley way, a back alley solution, if you know what I mean. Wink, 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 wink. I will explain that step maybe this weekend because it's actually quite simple, and I'll give you guys a preset as well for that. And you can just bake your own textures. Now, baking your own textures is a compromise because you'll probably end up losing a lot of these parts here with the mascara, etc. There is a way to preserve that, and it's not really that difficult, and I explain how, but you'll probably still lose some details like with the shading near the top of the head. Right. In some cases, it's completely unavoidable because you'll run into like a model without a full body. So if there's no full body, there's no full textures, which means that you're going to have to rebuild the texture through like baking anyways. Yeah, so in that case, it can't be helped, and your goal there is just to try and save as much of the details as you want. Ideally, if you have full texture, use the full textures. Sometimes it might cause an issue, so baking it is a better alternative. A good example of that is some of the Genshin / Honkai Star Rail characters. They have a neck seam basically, and I've explained that in the previous stream, where they have textured shadows that looks good in game, but it looks bad on a fully rendered 3D program with its own lighting source. Basically, the shadows look out of place. And beyond that, their face textures are usually a bit more pale from the body texture. So there's an edge there where things don't really... yeah, basically, there's an edge that you don't really want. So you would prefer to just bake your own textures to have like a more homogeneous... homogeneously shaded set of textures. And oh yeah, the third option is not really an option, that's a lie. And that's basically doing kind of the same thing here. And you would do that because how would I explain that? All right, so in this case, let me open up this. Let me explain this properly. So in this project here, everything is kind of simple because the entire body is running off basically one main piece of texture, which looks like this. So you get the legs in one piece, the arms in one piece, and all that. But there are certain models, and I am talking about Genesis 8 models in particular, and certain Blender models, where the arms are on their own texture, the torso are on their own texture, the legs are on their own texture, and the face are on their own texture. And in that case, the textures do not overlay properly onto the onto your G2B model. And it will leave gaps. And gaps are fine because you can use the method where you do one set of texture and then you export that, and then you grab the adjacent texture and then export that and try to jigsaw it together. But that takes a lot of time. So that might take you up to an hour to 2 hours to do, depending on your proficiency. And these could be hours used to work on other things. So what I'm trying to say is that you will have to go into Blender if that's the case. Let me open that up. You have to go to Blender in such a case and basically load up all the textures across. Load up all the textures on these parts here. You will need a program called Simple Bake. It's a bought program, but it's the best way to do it. And then for the UV settings, you will need to go into new UV maps. So it will rebake the textures under a new UV map. And if everything is selected, it will combine everything together, re-jumble it, and then lay it out in such a way that everything is on one map. And you would ask yourself, hey, McZippy, why don't you do... hey, McZippy, why don't you do that at the very start with this one? Well, it's a 95% perfect solution. And by that, I mean, there's a little fixing to be done afterwards. So if you could do it the normal way, you would prefer to do that. But if all the parts are on different maps, so if, for example, the map might only cover up to here, as in such a case as a Genesis 8 model, it might just come up to here. There will be a gap here where the torso is actually leaning out. So here, there will be a gap, right? So you grab the torso texture and this texture and then figure out where the gap is and then stick it onto, yeah, you know, it gets very time consuming. So you put all of that onto one big texture using Simple Bake. I think it's like 15 or 20 bucks. But if you're using this as like a hobby or like kind of like a semi-professional type of thing, it's well worth it because it's just one-off payment and it will come up useful in the future again and again. So that's actually the third thing that I'll have to explain to you guys. It sounds really confusing, but once you get the foundation of it, it becomes very self-evident. What I mean, everything will just fall into place. So for today, I covered the simplest bit. Next stream, I will cover the custom baking, and I will give you guys one of my old presets as well, so you guys can get started. And I think for the next stream as well, I will start going over the clothing. I will start going over the clothing as well, because the baking is, yeah, it shouldn't really take 2 hours. Yeah. So anyways, that's about it for the stream. I don't suppose there's there's not a lot of questions in chat. Yeah, that's about it. So if you guys have any questions, just ask me on DM or in the comment section. It's better for you to just DM me. The comment section, I don't really pay attention to too much. I will try to leave timestamps, but for this stream, it's just really about one topic. I'll see how much I can timestamp, just to help you guys out. And that's about it. And just in time too, because my voice, you can hear it probably, it's getting kind of croaky. Yeah, so that's about it. See ya. Bye bye.